Nutrition Hero Podcast. Igniting both the art and the science of functional medicine. Here's your host, Dr. Brad Watts.
What's the word, ladies and gentlemen? Welcome to the last episode of the Nutrition Hero Podcast for the calendar year 2019. Dr. Brad Watts, thanks for joining me. Thanks for being part of the journey this year. It's been an interesting year. We've had a lot of cool guests. I've learned a lot of things, and hopefully you've learned a lot of things as well along the way. Today, my friend, is no different. We have a couple of things that we're going to go through from a news perspective. American Diabetes Association is doing their thing again, so we want to make sure that you get the info on that. Additionally, I am going to be talking to you about some information. We'll call it information. Some ways of looking at life that hopefully improve your communication skills with your patients for 2020. Because remember, in functional medicine, it's not about what you know. It's about what you can communicate to the person sitting across from you. So we're going to go through that as well. But first, if you are listening for the first time and you are listening on iTunes, hit subscribe to iTunes or Stitcher. Or if you're one of the few people on YouTube, that's cool too. We are an audio podcast first and foremost, but every now and then we do have some video that people like to watch on YouTube. So make sure you hit subscribe wherever you get your media. Thumbs up, or if you're on Stitcher and iTunes, hit the 5-star. And we appreciate your support. So very cool. All right, 2020 is going to be interesting, by the way. I'm excited to see where this goes. I got some cool guests lined up. Some heavy hitters in the functional medicine space, people that are movers and shakers, not necessarily treating patients on a daily basis anymore. And so I'm excited for you to meet them in a way that hopefully you have not in the past. So that'll be cool. All right, some first-time guests as well. And I don't think I'm going to spill the beans on that any further. And we'll just move on. How about that? So this is coming from Medscape, by the way. If you're not a subscriber to Medscape, to news, what they do is they customize healthcare news for you based off of whatever your likes or dislikes are. And so, like, if I don't want to watch anything or read anything about colon cancer, I don't have to see that. They'll basically tailor the news. It's a service. It's a free service. They'll tailor the news for me. And so I love the diabetes world because I like showing patients how to weasel their way out of living a lifestyle that's compatible with diabetes, obviously. And here is some news from the American Diabetes Association. And here's the title, all right? Just get a load of this, okay? ADA, American Diabetes Association, advises wider use of newer glucose-lowering drugs. Well, this is going to be good, right? All right, so here's just a couple of sections from this. For 2020, American Diabetes Association is now advising clinicians to consider prescribing sodium glucose cotransporter 2, so this is like Invokana, inhibitors, or glucagon-like peptide 1, GLP-1 receptor agonist to patient high risk for atherosclerosis, cardiovascular disease, heart failure, chronic kidney disease, and in addition to patients, all of this is in addition to patients with already established disease as previously recommended. What they're saying is now you don't even have to have atherosclerosis, heart failure, or CKD, chronic kidney disease, in order to qualify to be on these medications. Ding, ding. What a wonderful way to boost sales. Now, you can call me jaded if you like. That's fine. I can take it. I've been called many things in the functional medicine space, and I promise you jaded would be putting it nicely. So, one of the things that I just want to highlight on here, we're using medications prophylactically because they know that the end stages of diabetes are associated with chronic kidney disease, atherosclerosis, and heart failure. Hello? We should be working on the lifestyle, the L word, the word that pharmaceutical companies don't get paid for, the L word. And lifestyle is where it's at. It's amazing. It's amazing. So ADA now advises that consideration for use of those drugs be independent of the patient's baseline A1C or individualized treatment target. Oh my goodness. All right. So previously, additional pharmacologic agents were recommended only when the A1C was above target despite using first-line metformin and lifestyle interventions, right? their lifestyle interventions and not living a lifestyle compatible with health and healing. Let's be real here, right? So, did you get that? All right. Did you understand that last paragraph? They now advise consideration for use of those drugs independent of what your A1C is. Oh my goodness. That's like saying I'm going to recommend weight loss for somebody independent of what their weight loss or what their current weight is. I'm going to recommend a weight loss program for you independent of what your current body weight is. That's insane. It's insane. All right. Now, it says the new guidance was based on analysis from cardiovascular outcomes trials, who participates in trials, that included patients at high risk in addition to those with established disease and those with only modestly elevated A1C, such as, then they name a specific trial of the medication Trulicity. This is unbelievable. This is unbelievable for a couple of reasons. Number one, this is unbelievable because they're not even hiding it anymore. Right? They're not even hiding it. They say you should use this drug if you have a risk. Well, what are the risks? Family-associated risks, lifestyle issues, and if you have the genetics for it. All right, but we're not going to handle any of those other issues. So like if your dad has kidney disease and now you, right, can be put on these medications that are glucose-lowering medications despite the fact that you don't currently have kidney disease. Think about this. This is wild. Thank God we don't have like this government-controlled healthcare in the United States like you would in China or something like that. This is crazy. This is crazy. Like what? Maybe this is like borderline conspiracy coming up here, but what happens if there is government-mandated healthcare and we just have a sales quota to hit for Eli Lilly or whoever's selling Trulicity? This is wild. It's wild. Anyway, just throwing it out there for you because the ADA advises wider use of newer glucose-lowering drugs as a headline is not subtle. And number two, you're going to be seeing it in 2020 with your patient base. So usually it takes a quarter or two for these patients to start trickling in, but the docs are going to put it into play because they are not the movers and shakers. They're the order takers, and they're the ones that are front line. So do they like it? Probably not. They don't like it as much as you don't like it. But the point is that your patients are going to be going through this. Moving it in the right direction is going to be up to you. All right, second to last paragraph. It says the recommendation has also been incorporated into the 2020 revision of the Joint ADA European Association for the Study of Diabetes Consensus Statement on the Management of Hyperglycemia and Type 2 Diabetes, published in Diabetes Care and Diabetology. All right, Diabetology. You mean the same journal that published an article in 2015 that said that you can see signs S-I-G-N-S, signs of reversing type 2 diabetes in as little as a week with food modulation? That same journal? Wow. Anyway, I'm a little salty on this one. Same journal. This is unbelievable. All right. Let's move on. How about we move on today? We're going to move on to talking about a topic that is very near and dear to my heart. It's something I've studied for quite a few years, but haven't really talked about. And so one of the questions I get to travel every month all over the country, meet doctors that are new in the functional medicine space, doctors that are seasoned in the functional medicine space. Every now and then somebody that's been doing it longer than me, which is kind of fun because I get to poke and prod and see what their evolution has been like as a functional medicine provider. And one of the things that I get asked about is, Doc, how do you move a patient from the fence? How do you move a patient that's sitting on the fence and is like, I want help, I don't want help, I want help, I don't want help? How do you move that patient? And my answer is always the same, and it's very simple. You don't. You don't. They have to move themselves, and if they don't move themselves, they're not for me. When you tell a patient that, it has a unique effect in helping them solve their own problems. So either they're in or they're out. And so I want to talk about this today because it's really based on something called certainty. And certainty is like the currency of functional medicine. Certainty is really the currency in healthcare, and but definitely in functional medicine, Certainty is where it's at. And so today we're going to be talking about certainty as it relates to you enhancing your ability to practice functional medicine. So, all right, so this is a presentation that I gave, oh goodness, this might have been a few weeks ago. I think it was in Anaheim. I gave this presentation to a bunch of doctors in Anaheim. And so what I want to do is I want to at least give you some of the highlights here without boring you to death. So when we look at functional medicine, certainty is the currency of communication. If you're not certain about what you're telling me, my level of care for what you, or my level of regard for what you have to say is almost zero. Almost zero. Right? Because if there's no certainty there, if you don't believe you, why would I believe you? That makes sense. If I can say it that way, that makes sense. So one of the things that I found out over the last decade in practice is that being in functional medicine, being in business, hanging a shingle takes courage. Being in the game takes courage. And you can reverse engineer courage, understanding that it's going to get built one way or the other. And life has an interesting way of building courage for you. If you choose not to, that's all right. But like, if there's a message in your heart, if you go, why did I become a provider? Why am I doing what I'm doing right now? And it's because you want to help people. Okay, like some version of that. And if that's not what it is, then what in the world? What in the world are you doing in healthcare? So it's you want to help somebody, you want to help people, you want to make a difference, and that's a big deal. Ultimately, that's why you're here. And it takes courage to be able to do that. Now, one of the things that happens is if you're not helping people the way that you're supposed to be, the way that you were designed to be helping people, maybe, if you think about it in terms of destiny, if you're not helping people the way that you're meant to, life has a way of pulling it out of you. And many of you listening know my story. If you haven't, I'm not going to tell it here. It's like you know my story. How I got involved in functional medicine, what my first few years were like, and what we've done with functional medicine since. That story is a story of me operating in a way that I wasn't forced right away. I wasn't forced into operating in courage. Right? But I had this thing in my heart, this dream in my heart that says I'm going to help people in a certain way. And life creates circumstances that draws that courage out of me because I didn't know I had to build it one way or the other. All right, so I'm going to go through how to build courage today because I don't want you to have to have life pull it out of you. It's not as painful if you build it yourself, right? Not as painful. So, all right. So we're going to talk about that today. Remember, you can reverse engineer courage and it gets built one way or the other. Courage is just confidence in action. Courage is, if you take a note, like on this, write courage on a sheet of paper. Underneath it, just write confidence in action. It's what builds your practice. It's what gives you the opportunity to help patients and actually change their lives. Is courage. Without courage, okay, you can't do any of that. Courage is confidence in action. Courage is confidence in action. To operate in courage, you have to develop confidence, and that's nothing more than being certain of what you do or who you are. In functional medicine, you got to have at least one of these things. Certainty in what you're doing or in who you are. If you have both of them, my goodness, if you got both of them, you can change the world. But if you got to at least have one in order to change your community. Okay? You got to have confidence. You have to have certainty in what you're doing or who you are. So those are two different things. External certainty is certainty in what you're doing. Like if you're treating a diabetes patient, you got to know the ins and outs of the diabetic situation for their case. You got to be willing to sit down and talk with them and understand that you know the physiology and you can communicate it to them in a way that's meaningful. You got to know your stuff. You have to be externally certain about what you're doing. Okay, that's one thing. If you don't have that, then you better have the other one, which is internal certainty, and that's being certain about who you are. And so I have two family members that that they demonstrate internal certainty better than anybody else I see. And it's interesting to me. They can talk about anything, and they'd be willing to tell you, oh, I don't know about that, right? But they're so certain in who they are, they're going to still talk about it because they're interested now. They want to know. They want to know. It's this internal certainty about knowing who you are that's unshakable so that you can't be moved by opposition. See, this is important. This is important. So I got these two family members. So I'm going to plant that there, and I'm going to come back to it here in a little bit. So you have external certainty, which is being certain about what you're doing. And when you're not externally certain, you at least have to be internally certain. Who you are, being willing to say, well, I have no idea, but we're going to find out together. Right? It takes a very certain person to be able to say that. I don't know, but we're going to find out. And certainty, being the currency of healthcare, is what allows you to take abuse from patients and other providers without wrecking your motivation. Certainty allows you to take abuse. If you're certain, right, like right now, if I tell you donuts are bad for a diabetes patient, 100% of you listening should be certain that that is an accurate statement. But what if you're not? Right? What if this is patient Bob says, my doctor says that I could have 3 donuts a week. Okay. Right? My doctor knows what's going on. My doctor says that your programming is terrible. My doctor says, fill in the blank. Right? You know donuts are bad for somebody that can't regulate their blood sugar. Right? Like, if you don't know that, like, you got some learning to do, right? You feel the same way listening to this right now. Being certain allows you to take abuse from patients or from other providers because you know either they're not certain or they're not willing to do battle, all right, to help that person heal. Being certain gives you some spine in the situation. Being certain gives you some spine. Certainty is knowing that the wind can move a sailboat. Confidence is making a big sail, and courage is putting the boat in the water. These are the 3 things that I went over thus far. Courage you got to have in order to hang a shingle. You got to have. Confidence you got to have to be in the game. And certainty you got to have at least to make sure that you're able to communicate it with people. So it's super, super important because if you're going to reverse engineer courage, you got to start with an inventory of your certainty level. Not just with what you know, but about what you're willing to know. You got to find out. What are you willing to find out? To reverse engineer courage, you got to take an inventory of your certainty. And so here are just a couple of symptoms that show up if you have a lack of certainty. Number 1, this is, and again, no particular order, but number 1, people that are addicted to justice, being right. If you can't let somebody be wrong, right, and just let them be stuck in their wrongness, right, you got a problem. If you're like a medical justice warrior, right, I think we just coined a new term for ourselves here, a medical justice warrior, you might have a certainty problem, right? So follow me on this. If you're addicted to being right, what that means is if you let people be wrong, if you let somebody's opinion stay wrong, right, and you let it go, subconsciously it's like you agree with them and you can't tolerate it. Right, so you got to enforce. You have to enforce your opinion on them. That's wrong. Can't do it. Can't do it. Okay. So I'm talking about picking and choosing your battles and understanding that every now and then you got to keep your mouth shut, even if it means that it hurts, even if it's to your detriment. Right? Sometimes you got to let people be wrong. So how about another one? Using anger to emphasize your position. Oh, that's common. How about this one? Systems are out of whack in your practice. If you're not certain about what you're doing, what's the point in scaling your business? It's just going to create a whole bunch of stress that's all resting on your uncertainty. So if you're having a problem scaling your business, check your certainty. Get certain about what you're doing. Are you really helping people? You got to find out. Are you really helping people? I mean, that's super important. So how about this one? This goes right to the ADA's thing I just presented a few minutes ago. Lack of certainty. You might be uncertain if you only know what you get paid to know. Zero exploration. You only know what you get paid to know. Heartache for impact. That's the last one, right? If you got a heartache for a bigger impact, you got to work on your certainty, right? Heartache for a bigger impact. It takes courage to have impact. It takes courage, and you got to work on your certainty to be able to build your courage. Remember, certainty, confidence, courage. Certainty is knowing something, right? Knowing something. Confidence is when you let it trickle down from your head to your heart and it comes out your mouth and you go, yeah, this is how it works. That's confidence. You're confident in what you know all of a sudden, right? But to be able to charge money for it, oh, that takes courage. That takes courage. It's just like I said with the sailboat, right? Certainty is knowing that wind can move the sailboat. Confidence is you sitting down and making a big sail. Courage is actually dipping the boat in the water. So you got to build certainty by controlling a few things, right? Now, these are two people in my life that I told you about earlier. There's two people in my life that I think are the most certain people that I know. The most certain. And it's because they're both very disciplined. They do a good job at building their certainty, whether they know it or not. I'm just putting the mechanics to what I've observed these two dudes doing. So these two guys are actually my father and his brother, my uncle. And it's awesome, okay? So their level of certainty, they can talk to anybody about anything. If they don't know much about the topic at hand, it doesn't mean they're going to stop talking about it, right? They ask questions, great questions. They ask great questions that lead them down the road to better understanding, so they create certainty about what it is that they don't know about. It's amazing. And one of the things I found is that oftentimes people that aren't confident don't ask questions. They don't ask questions because they're not willing to build certainty. Okay, so this is where I said you got to either have certainty external or internal. External meaning in what you're doing. So if you don't have that, you got to have internal certainty so that you can build external certainty. These two I can talk about healthcare with, and like the nitty-gritty stuff. And while they don't understand all the ins and outs, what they do very well is ask questions to build their understanding so that they can participate in the conversation. And it's because they are certain about who they are. They have a confidence in who they are. It's pretty cool. That's pretty cool. So a couple of things that will help you build that. All right, I just want to throw this out here. A couple of things that will help you build it. Police what's coming in your eyes and in your ears. Police what's going in. If it's just trash coming in, what can you expect is going to come out? Fear, anxiety, trash, right? Police your self-talk. Police your self-talk is important as well. Making sure that you're not, leveling accusations on yourself all the time. I always do this. I can't believe I did that again. Blah, 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 whatever it might be. Police your self-talk. Number 3, learn how to access new information. You got to be confident in who you are, and if you're not confident in who you are, then you got to start there before you start hanging a shingle trying to help people with functional medicine. I'm telling you, you're always going to run up against somebody that knows more than you. Always. And if that's where your confidence is at, what do you do when that person asks you a question you don't know the answer to? Do you crumble? Or do you stand there and you say, well, I don't know, but I'm going to find out before I go to bed tonight? That's what I'm saying. You have to have confidence in who you are to be able to say, I don't know. It's cool. All right. Build experience on an established foundation. You can't throw away what you already know. Build off of what you already know. You got to do that. You got to do it. And it's cool. So bolt information, new bits and pieces of information upon what you already know. You just got to bolt it together. When you bolt it together, you start creating something that's unique to your specific area in the marketplace. It's unique because it's being bolted on to your unique experiences. It's amazing. So if you are somebody that's not in the industry yet, you're looking to break into the industry, like these two people in my life, right? Like my father and my uncle. You have to work on your confidence so that when you hit the edges of what you know, you hit those boundaries, you find those boundaries, that you don't sheepishly retract. You got to keep pushing forward. You got to keep pushing those boundaries. You got to make it happen. All right. Now, I'm excited for what 2020 has to bring in functional medicine. Okay? 2 reasons. Number one, because 2019 rather, the information that we learned in 2019 was about application, not about exploring and finding new genetic information and stuff. And like, it's cool. I'm telling you, if we could just apply the information that has been generated over the last decade in functional medicine, if we could just apply it, we would absolutely crush chronic disease in the United States. Crush it. The problem is that people are not confident in who they are, so they're not applying the information that is at the edges of their skill set. 2020, please, let it be the year of you developing confidence in who you are, not just in what you know, in who you are. All right. Thank you for listening to the Nutrition Hero podcast today. A little different flavor, but thanks for coming along. Thank you for 2019. Merry Christmas, everybody, and Happy New Year.